They say if you want to keep your soul steady, if you want mornings that breathe instead of scream, you move out where the pine trees grow old and the wind has enough room to stretch its arms. And for 130 years, that's exactly what the Hawks family did on a 100-acre spread in the rural folds of Bladen County. A place so quiet you can hear soybean leaves rubbing against each other in the summer heat. So still that dawn light feels like a benediction, so familiar that you know every fence post. Like a brother. And maybe that's why I never imagined trouble would arrive disguised as a cream-colored envelope with a pinecone logo in the corner. That morning felt like every morning before it. Dew silvering the fence rails, longleaf pines nodding in the light breeze, the old barn roof catching sunrise like a sheet of polished metal. And yet when I tore that envelope open beside the mailbox, everything I thought I understood about my land shifted sideways. A $100,000 HOA fine for a barn I built on property my family recorded when Grover Cleveland was president. Architectural nonconformity, it said, unauthorized agricultural structure. As if my barn, my work, my sweat, could be illegal simply because some suburban committee decided it didn't match their color palette. I actually laughed. A real laugh. The kind that slips out when something is so stupid your brain refuses to treat it seriously. I called Pinewood Summit HOA immediately, left a polite message explaining they'd sent their legal noise to the wrong man. I even ended with my father's favorite line, "Appreciate your time," then headed back up my gravel drive thinking the whole absurdity would dissolve in a day or two. But peace doesn't leave with a roar. It leaves quietly, like a fox stepping across a field you thought was empty. 2 hours later, a black Lexus glided into my driveway, polished, smug, allergic to dirt. And out stepped Karen Willoughby, the HOA president, heels sharp enough to aerate my soil, sunglasses angled like she was allergic to humility. Behind her were 2 HOA inspectors, one clutching a measuring wheel like a toddler holding a weapon he didn't know how to use. She announced, without even greeting me, that according to Sierra Group's 2016 development expansion plan, part of my property fell under their architectural oversight. My land, their oversight. The absurdity of it tightened the air between us. I told her the truth. We'd surveyed the line, double-checked every stake, confirmed every inch. Todd Whitmer, the most meticulous surveyor in the county, had verified it. This land wasn't part of any HOA. Never had been, never would be. She didn't blink. She ordered her inspector to begin measuring her setback. I stepped forward, blocking his path, and that's when the air seemed to still. Pine needles barely moved. Even the birds quieted. Karen straightened her shoulders. You have 14 days to comply. Comply. With trespassers, with liars, with people who didn't know the soil but wanted to own it. She left dust in her wake, but she also left something else. A whisper in the back of my mind telling me this wasn't incompetence. This was intention. The second envelope arrived the next morning. Heavier paper, embossed seal, legal threats thick enough to choke on. $110,000 now, plus escalating penalties, and a warning that they could seize assets if I continued to refuse participation. They fined me for not attending an HOA meeting I wasn't even part of. Something snapped quietly inside me. Not rage, not panic, but clarity. I called Ronald T. Mallister, attorney at law, the man farmers call when big money tries to swallow old land. He listened in silence as I read every line of the letter. When I finished, he exhaled. Brandon, they're not confused. They're hiding something. The weight of that sentence hung in the air like a storm cloud. Todd arrived the next morning with drones, GPS units, and a stack of equipment that looked like he was planning to scan the entire state. We walked the southern boundary slowly, methodically, the same line my grandfather had walked every morning of his life. Everything checked out, every stake, every reading, every coordinate, until the moment Todd stopped moving. He unrolled a layered county map across my workshop table. Drone imaging, modern parcel overlays, zoning expansions, and there, sitting north of the real boundary, were 9 structures. Not just homes. One was labeled Pinewood Summit Community Office. Todd pointed at them, each tap of his finger heavier than the last. These aren't on their land, Brandon, he said. They're sitting on yours. The barn they fined me for? Legal. The houses they built? Illegal. Every last one. And just like that, the truth rose like something rotten breaking the surface. They weren't enforcing rules. They were covering tracks. tracks that ran straight through Hawk's land. Knowing the truth is one thing. Proving it is another. Winning is something else entirely. Ron connected me with a specialist, an older man with stiff shoulders and eyes that had seen more boundary disputes than most people see sunsets. He spent 3 days scanning metadata, comparing plats, analyzing overlay mismatches. On the third afternoon, he tapped the laptop screen. This wasn't sloppy surveying, he said. This was done deliberately. Someone shifted boundary lines by fractions of degrees to nudge entire foundations onto your land. That same evening, I found a yellow sheet of paper in my mailbox. Stop digging. You push, we push back. No signature. No envelope. No courage. Just threat. It didn't scare me, but it did something else. It reignited an old instinct, the survival sense my father used to call the quiet warning. I oiled my grandfather's walnut stock rifle and set it by the bed, not because I expected violence, but because when people lie boldly enough to build houses on your land, you learn quickly they're capable of anything. 2 mornings later, Karen showed up again, this time holding a Tupperware dish of apple cobbler like it was a peace offering. The smile she wore wasn't confidence anymore. It was fear with makeup on. She invited me to a neighborly gathering at the Pinewood Summit Clubhouse, promising wine, conversation, and community harmony. Ron's voice echoed in my head. Go. It's a trap. Don't sign a thing. The clubhouse looked like a catalog spread, potted plants, warm lighting, soft jazz. A sign-in sheet waited near the door. At the bottom was a clause acknowledging participation in future architectural compliance. A Trojan horse made of printer paper. Instead of signing their sheet, I offered Karen a document of my own, an acknowledgement that she had received official notice of my boundary complaint. She signed it eagerly, trying to look gracious. She had no idea she'd just confessed. The hearing that followed felt like a storm rolling through the courthouse. Pinewood Summit's board members shrank into their seats, eyes darting like they'd wandered into the wrong movie. Karen's lawyer tried to play tough, but his voice cracked when Ron presented the aerial overlays. Then came the final blow. Karen's signature on my document, time-stamped, proving she'd been notified long before the HOA claimed ignorance. The judge leaned forward, silver eyebrows forming storm clouds. Mrs. Willoughby, he said, do you understand what this means? She whispered. It was a misunderstanding. No, the judge said, voice low. This was fraud. This was trespass. This was an abuse of authority. His ruling hit the room like thunder. All 9 structures ordered demolished. All HOA enforcement halted. All land officially restored to Brandon Hawks. But justice wasn't done. Not yet. Demolition morning arrived with an electric quiet, the kind of silence that comes before a storm breaks open. Dozens of locals lined the county road, some with lawn chairs, some with coolers, some filming, some simply watching history correct itself. A convoy of excavators and bulldozers rolled in under the pale Carolina sky. Deputies directed traffic. County inspectors held clipboards like shields. The sheriff looked at me. You ready, Brandon? I've been ready since the day they mailed that envelope. The first machine approached the oversized HOA headquarters, that smug building that had presided over so many aggressive letters. And for a moment, everything stilled. Then Karen came running, hair wild, panic raw in her voice. You can't do this, she screamed. This is community property. The sheriff lifted the court order. The excavator swung. The office shattered like a brittle bone. Wood split. Glass burst. Vinyl peeled. Poetic, heavy, inevitable. The crowd didn't cheer at first, not out of pity, but out of reverence, as if witnessing something sacred, land reclaiming itself. House after house folded in on itself. 9 structures erased. 9 wrongs undone. When the final wall fell, deputies approached Karen. Ma'am, we have a warrant for your arrest. Forgery. False filings. Fraudulent encroachment. She tried to run. She didn't make it far. As they placed her in the patrol car, she hissed through the glass. You'll regret this. I shook my head. No, Karen. I think this is the first time in months I won't. In the weeks that followed, I leveled the ground myself, smoothing out the scars the way a man heals wounds on a friend's skin. Then I planted apple trees, rows of them, letting sweetness grow where arrogance once tried to root itself. One afternoon, a boy from Pinewood Summit rode up to my gate and stared at the court ruling I'd framed beside my family crest. Is it true they built all that on your land? He asked. Every inch, I said. He looked over the field of young apple trees. It looks better this way. I smiled. Yeah, it does. And standing there under the late day sun, wind moving through the leaves like a quiet hymn, I felt something return that I hadn't felt since the first letter landed in my mailbox. Peace. Not the kind that hides. Not the kind you borrow. The kind you earn.